the Brain Slut.
Brain Slut, yes. And you read it?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So unlike the Tudo Grande and Bug Tussle, this is still very character driven and a very, very challenging performance. But it still, we're looking at a broken human being,
yeah,
and his objective throughout the night, and a lot of backstory, a lot of history. But in writing it, there's, instead of being a dialogue heavy script, it's more of a, almost more of a visual cinematic experience than it will be a dialogue heavy. I mean, there's there's a lot more locations. There's a lot of scenes without dialogue at all. And I think it's, from what I'm learning more about, I mean, even though I love shooting, like Tudo Grande, I think took 5 hours. We shot Bug Tussle in a day. This is going to take probably a week because it requires a lot more setup. There's a lot more visuals are very, very important because of the circumstance this character is dealing with. So in writing this, yeah, I think it's a step up for me as a writer for cinema, where I'm really looking at motion pictures rather than character study, simple, one location, let's shoot it. Because it's eventually what's going to lead into a feature. I'm not sure what the first feature will be yet. I've got probably 4 scripts and 1,000 ideas, but I wanted to really explore a short that is not just character driven, but more of a cinematic visual experience. Because the other 2 films have been mostly performance. And yeah, there's some great sound design, there's some great photography in it, music, you know, that is very effective in helping tell these character stories. This one's got a lot of great visuals, and you know, I've not to be a spoiler, but you know, I'm playing with color, I'm playing with symbolism, I'm playing with metaphors. There's a lot of things going on throughout the night.
Yeah.
That I think is more of a cinematic experience, visually, musically, until you. And again, at the end, there's still a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I think you're playing with reality in a way with Brain Slut, right? Because I don't know what it's gonna look like, but my sense is that it's like we're gonna see kind of what he's seeing, what the character is, what he's experiencing on the inside. How is that
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting for me when I was writing it, looking at how you can very specifically, there's nothing random ever, shouldn't be anyway. Everything is very specific in what occurs throughout that night in Brain Slut. Everything's so specific. And from the very first opening shot to the very last shot, And everything that happens within that night is this character um, is experiencing. Um, now, what the viewer is not going to know, and how I kind of set it up, and it will change. I've already have another draft since the one I sent you. There are dialogue that will change. There are things that will change because I'll find a better way to execute it. I'll find a better line that is simpler and better. But every event that takes place throughout the night, you're never going to know, is one, is this real? Two, is this a side effect? Is this an hallucination? Is this a dream? Is any of this real? What exactly? So, and you have a setup at the beginning between the older woman and Nick. And what exactly is an alarm bag? And what's going to happen? And what is this pill? And you have a setup, and then all of a sudden these things begin to happen to Philip throughout the night. There's a lot of questions of what is going on. And it's all very specific to a very specific event that you see at the end that explains everything that's happened throughout the night. However,
It's a big surprise.
you really don't. Yeah, I mean, and there's a little surprise at the end. He's like, oh, didn't expect to see that. I thought the whole thing was that. And but it, for me, with and I could tell you privately, because I think I would spoil it, but there's two real possibilities of what's actually happening. And if I told you one, I almost had a line in there and I removed it. I'm like, nope, that's too much information.
Okay.
I don't want that much information. But the journey of the mind, the journey on drugs, the journey of withdrawing from drugs, the journey of anxiety, depression, mental illness, the things that happen in your body. You know, there's a line in there, and it probably will change because there are things living inside me, and it's important that, because it's so true when you're experiencing a cycle of intense anxiety or panic. Even I used to have panic attacks, don't have them anymore, but that's a whole nother story. But your mind and the chemicals of the mind, and when they are altered, whether it's an imbalance, whether it's medication, whatever's going on with your brain chemistry that cannot be balanced in the blood panel, we don't really know exactly what's going on. I wanted to express and you see him throughout the night progressively getting worse. And I wanted to show and reveal that the human brain and the altered brain chemistry and then I also address other things like pharma play and there's a lot of underlying things that are inside it intentionally, but the story is his journey to the morning, which is important. And it's, again, goes back to what I spoke about personally, the moment where you quote unquote wake up.
Yeah.
which is very, when you become present, when you truly wake up to the present, when everything's right here, right now, when that really happens, when there's no more fear in the moment, when there's no more judgment, there's no more worry or crap. It's just right here, right now, all the time. When you really truly wake up to that, it's such a magical experience and such a liberating, freeing experience. But I don't think most people can reach that unless they cross that dark bridge. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the story I wanted to tell.
Yeah. And um let's go back a bit in the mental health journey. Because earlier you were talking about the doctors kind of giving you all these pills, you took, I don't know, um,
I
just,
couldn't tell you how many.
and I feel like um with Brain Slut, you're really looking at, because he's a brain slut, right? Forgive me, because I'm new to this concept. I just looked it up yesterday. So it's a but to me that's almost like a metaphor for, I mean, I know it's real, or maybe metaphor is not the right word. Maybe it's a parallel to what you go through as a patient, as
Oh
being,
yeah, you're a guinea pig.
yeah,
You're a guinea pig. You're
yeah,
But what happens though, that and this is what happens is it happened to me. I didn't I didn't go out volunteering for drug research trials, but you again, you don't go to the doctor and get a blood panel and it show you what all your brain chemistry is doing. It doesn't show you what tricyclics are doing. It doesn't tell you what your adrenaline's doing. It doesn't tell you what, they don't have a ton of information. They can they do a CT scan, they can look at the activity, brain activity, and what's going on, but there's not a lot
it's a
way
lot of,
to manage it. So a lot of it's guesswork. They don't know what medication, they don't know what dosage. Most of them don't have the illness themselves, so it's it's learned from a textbook. So you're going to have to be good. You're going to have to be insightful and aware, observing behavior of a patient and what's particularly wrong. So then you have to start playing with meds. And like I know so many people who are clearly not doing well, and their primary physician will just randomly prescribe them antidepressant. And I'm like, well, you're not qualified to do that. I mean, you can tell if I have a sinus infection, but you know what? When you're dealing with brain chemistry, you need a specialist and you need a good one. And I used to tell people, like, you need to go see a psychiatrist and you need to find a good one because, the wrong medication can make you worse. And then the where pharma play comes into it and where the brain slut portion becomes dangerous is when you are given a medication that actually works, psychoactive medication. And I take medication. I take medication every day. But um, when you've lived a life of anxiety and fear and depression, and all of a sudden a pill makes that go away, it's very dangerous. And that leads us to addiction and all kinds of other problems in our society. But let's look at the reality is I don't care if it's Xanax or heroin, they just want to feel better. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. I'm unhappy, I don't feel good, and this makes me feel good. You're sick, and the medicine makes me better. So, so when a physician, and particularly a psychiatrist, wants to find out what's going on. So when you're I mean, the first time somebody gave me a benzodiazepine, I was like, oh my God, it was euphoric. I'd never felt so calm and relaxed my entire life. Is this how normal people feel? Because this is amazing. And then eventually, there was at one point I was on, I think, 6 pills a day, sometimes some of them twice a day. And then you felt toxic. And then you drink on top of it. Then you're a complete mess. So what happens is that journey of trying to figure out what's going to work for you. What can you do? What can't you do? Lifestyle changes. There's so much of a process. But when this book, where I've actually found the term brain slut, it's called Guinea Pig Zero. It's a fascinating book. And it talks about how people who are inner, it could be, for instance, the character Philip in Brain Slut, he had a traumatic event that emotionally, physically damaged him. And in the hospital, he's being treated. He's, given medication. He's in rehab, physical, that impacted brain activity. So how Western medicine works is meds. It's how we fix things. So this particular character, and I understand it from my own experience, is that you could very easily, and I think that's why we have such a problem with drugs and alcohol, and particularly in the States, is that's how we fix things. It's readily available. It's easy to get. And there's such a stigma attached to it, which is unfortunate because you have to, again, look at it. People just want to be happy and it makes them feel better. And I think we do have to address, why are you so unhappy? Because I think we are an unhappy nation. And I do think people run around with a bunch of hate and anger and anxiety and fear. And that's what you see on the news. That's what you see on the television. That's what you see out in the world. And yet we don't just discuss and say it's perfectly normal to have a bad day.
Yeah.
It's perfectly normal to be anxious sometimes. Yes, some people have different struggles that do need to be treated, but there are other ways to treat it and become present and mindful than becoming an addict or a brain slut, where you are actively seeking out drug research trials for drugs every opportunity you can get so you can stay high, to avoid what's real. Even though what's real may be unpleasant, there is a way out. So that's where Brain Slut came from, because there's a lot going on. And I love the fact that he has a drug agent too. It's just so typical.
Yes. Is there a connection between Brain Slut and Second Sleep?
Yeah, it's the same story.
Oh.
Second Sleep, well, it's a different script.
Okay.
Entirely different script. Same story. Second Sleep never got completed.
Okay.
We had shot. I know we'd shot the opening scene with actor Fred Lane. He's good. He's a good friend of mine. So he came up. He was playing Nick. When we had shot that opening scene, and I really prepared for this role, and he was a mess, and I was kind of a mess too. Um, then I think during the production, the co-director was just kind of disappeared, and we don't even know where the footage is.
Oh, wow.
So it just didn't get finished. So he had made a trailer. We were all very excited about it. There was a lot of press about it. And so this is the opportunity to retell, well, actually tell the story in a short form and really examine the potential to make a feature story, because there's a backstory and a lot going on with Philip. And so yeah, it's the same. And I changed the title. Brain slut's actually very, I want to know what that means when I see it. Like, what is that? Second sleep was simply a metaphor of, I don't know if you term, when people used to do a lot of their trading in the middle of the night when it was cool. So they would go to sleep, wake up in the middle of the night, do their trading when their wagons and horses, and then when it was cooler, then go back and have their second sleep.
Okay.
And I thought it was a fantastic title of he's asleep. He was born and was awake. Now he's in his second sleep. And we need to wake up.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, but I just think Brain Slut, it's going to have a more rapid reaction, particularly in the festival circuit, of what is that? Is it a horror film? Is it, what is it?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's enticing to know what
Yes.
exactly a brain slit is.
Mm-hmm.
Second sleep is, even though I still love the title, is, I think it's like, it could be a wallowing melodrama.
Yeah. 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 No, I like the title Brain Slut. Because it got me, I immediately went and Googled it. So what is a brain slut?
Well, it'd be hard to find. I mean, I think Urban Dictionary, I think somebody put something up in there about it, but
Yeah.
there's very little about it.
Yeah.
If you look at but when I was reading, when I read a lot, there are certain terms that jump out at me. And I remember reading this Guinea Pig Zero book, and Brain Slut came out. I'm like, whoa, what is that? That's beautiful. And it jumped out at me like when titles are important to me, but I don't. Uh, I'd rather have them intriguing and kind of, when you Google, it's like the only thing that's going to show up. I kind of like that idea. It's kind of like Volcanic Theatre Pub. There's not another Volcanic Theatre Pub in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you Google Volcanic Theatre, we're going to be the only thing that pops up. Tutu Grande was similar. I didn't even have a title for it, but I went and we were ready to shoot, and I went on Amazon going, I need to find no, I went to Google, large man's tutu. First thing that popped up was Tutu Grande. Title! It was it. I'm like, oh yeah, gotta have that. Book tussle was It's a community right outside my hometown. Speaker of the House Carl Albert was actually born there, and so it does kind of represents every small town America for me.
Yeah.
It also the reference to the Beverly Hillbillies, which is ideal for them dreaming to go to Beverly Hills, where they're not really going to fit in. And also, I think we talked about that. I love the idea that fighting with bugs and tussling with bugs is very similar to always dealing with your demons. So Brain Slut, I think, is the same thing. It's like I don't think there's going to be anything else on the internet
Yeah.
except Brain Slut. If you bug tussle, there'll be other things that pop up. But
Yeah.
if you do a bug tussle movie, it's the only thing that's going to pop up.
Yeah.
So titles are important, but I think you really gotta be careful and not, people do it all the time. It's so generic. Even the name of their business,
Yeah.
you be original,
Yeah.
because when you're dealing with the world of the World Wide Web, you need to be found. So you do have to consider a title.
True. All right. So speaking of the Volcanic Theatre Pub, um, it it came out of you had the Actors Realm, and that was all kind of tied in, right?
Yeah. So when I
Oregon.
moved to Bend, like, what's an actor from LA going to do in Bend, Oregon? So the first thing I did, there's a community college in Bend,
Mhm.
and they have this community learning, continuing education portion of the college. So I started teaching there, teaching classes. The classes became very popular. Then I ended up with 3, 4 classes, I think, covering different topics of acting and storytelling. And then I discovered that when these classes ended, because usually they're only like 6 weeks, once a week, you're not going to learn anything really in that short amount of time about what we really do. So, but they all wanted more. So people were pushing me into, hey, let's make this a weekly studio thing. I'm like, okay, so I rented a space, and then that's what created the Actors Realm. And out of that became Volcanic Theater, where we were doing plays in pubs. So I think the first one was a Mammoth play called Bobby Golden Hell, um, where we did it. I think first one was Silver Moon Brewing in Bend, and then we did a Zoo Story, Edward Albee, in a pub. I think a few locations actually around town. And these were all using my students, and I would be there on their stage because most of them had zero experience. All they knew was how I worked, which was beneficial because they weren't corrupted. You could take somebody's been doing community theater for 20 years. It's going to be impossible to say, stop that. Don't do that. Bring it down. They'd have to relearn the entire craft because they've been taught to present, which is actually the opposite experience. So it was beneficial that knowing that the audience is just the flies on the wall. They're just in the room. They're overhearing their performances. It's just between you and me now, man. Just you and me. All we have to do is be together. You need to want something, and I want something that's conflicted, and we're going to have drama. And once they learned that, when we started doing the plays, one of my students is a dear friend of mine, still is, was an architect, and he wanted out. he said to me one day, "Hey, you know that pub theater thing you always talk about?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to do it?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, I'm gonna leave my job and open up this theater with you." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Let's do it." And so we had to find a location. And he'd been in a couple of plays with me, Zoo Story and Bobby Golden Howe. Um, he was fascinated with the idea of having a pub theater. Um, and it grew uh, from like when we first opened, we were doing film screenings and live theater, live music. It just blew up because um, I don't think one they experienced a great deal of theater like what we were doing. In fact, it's pretty rare anywhere you go, but they certainly have experienced something so real. May not have been their thing, but they knew it's something. Whoa, this is dangerous. It's suspenseful. It's intense. Um, the space itself, because he was an architect and I was essentially a contractor. So he would go, "Oh, I think we need to do this." All right, I'll put it in. And we essentially built it ourselves. So we found an old warehouse, built it ourselves. We were most of the labor, and then we opened up a theater.
Did I lose you? Oh, okay. I think we're okay. We have about 7 minutes left.
Okay.
If you're okay with it, I'd love to keep going, but if you have to go, I totally understand. So
We can keep going. I have nothing going on. I gotta make a couple phone calls, but later on. But yeah, we're good.
okay. Yeah, so the Volcanic Theatre Pub, that's pretty incredible. And now that's kind of that chapter is closing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
are you still kind of you're not involved with it at all, or it's done?
Um, yeah. I mean, yeah. Selling it was the whole point was to get out.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I still deal with emails,
Yeah.
messages, and things like that. Um, pretty much every day. I have to explain I'm no longer the oh I'm no longer the owner. I'm no longer the talent buyer. I'm no longer the manager. Um, and agencies and artists still contact me and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm out." You know, and I think it was in short, pandemic was for any theater, any gathering place was tough because, especially in Oregon, you're shut out. You're done. You cannot open. And that was for a year. Then, oh, you can open for half cap. I'm like, well, I don't have anything to put on. And is it safe? And
Yeah.
then, oh, then you're closed again. Then
Yeah.
you're open back up. And then, like, and it was so stressful.
Such.
And that, in addition to not doing any performances, any play performances, and film screenings. I mean, we did some film screenings, but opening up the pub theater was always about having theater. Everything else was a bonus. Um, but we got so popular so quickly because we designed the room uh, with with acoustics in mind first. Then aesthetics became second. We wanted to keep the warehouse black box feel. We wanted to sound good. We needed the sound to be soaked up. So especially in the theater with actors talking at a normal volume, you wanted everybody to be able to hear it. But it really translated really well to music. People loved playing in the room and agencies. And all of a sudden, I don't know, within 3-4 years, we were doing 250 events a year, maybe more, because we were so sought after doing live music and other type of live performances, where I didn't have time to rehearse, or I didn't have time to go, oh, I need to set aside 3 weekends so I can do this play, because everything is booked so much in advance. And so when you're booking these emails and they're just coming in every day, you got hundreds of emails. You're just like, okay. I became a booking agent. I became a talent buyer. And it was fun, but that's not who I am. And
Yeah.
what I learned is, and isolation is a big thing for me, is when you isolate me away from people, away from connectivity, away from self-expression, artistic expression, I don't do well. I
Yeah.
need to have that. So being at the theater and around people and around other artists, whether it's music or whatever, was still healthy. But it got to a point where I was just not. I mean, I'd shot a couple little short films with these, but I wasn't pursuing what I think I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it was time to give it up.
That
And
makes
it
sense.
was, it was your baby, and it was, it was kind of a tough decision to go, okay, I'm out. But the future and the potential for everything, that's the doors that are opening up for me now, is so much more exciting than running a theater in Bend, Oregon, because I'm going to be all over the place. I mean, I'll probably be a festival director for a film festival. I'll probably be a music agent, just booking talent. I'll probably be working as an actor again. Probably doing more theater. I mean, it's just opened up a whole bunch of opportunity again, which is very exciting. And I'm traveling a ton. I mean, it was the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that that it was essential to the community and important to the community, which I'm very grateful for. And I think they were very grateful for the theater. But it wasn't healthy for me to keep running it.
Oh, yeah. So less than a minute. So I guess it's time for us to do another link, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.